go to Ben, and then we'll go to David after that.
Coach, what was the experience like last night just to see the game come together the way it did, and also see Elijah pitch as well as he did in his own backyard?
Yeah, that part was a little surreal, but starting from the top, it was a mad scramble just to get anything. But, we were kind of doing, I don't want to say a favor, but we were doing a big part of the work by making the drive. But those guys were just incredibly hospitable. The whole deal was first class. I mean, they announced a welcome back to both Scott's, Christian and Sean, as well as EP. Hooked us up with extra tickets for fans coming, just multiple things. And then in a weird sort of way, a compliment or something that was hospitable is they competed their butts off. I mean, they wanted to win bad. And ultimately that's why you're playing games. I mean, we're not just scrambling over there to get guys innings. We could scrimmage and do that. So the whole thing was great from their end. Unfortunately, we couldn't match that from our end. There was some frustrating play at times, but I think, the Road Vols theme from Georgia Southern was just compete like crazy, even in times of frustration or doubt, and, find a way to come out of there. And we came out of there with a win. But the guys who played the best were Christian Scott. Unfortunately, we didn't get to pitch Sean, but we did pitch Elijah. And Elijah was kind of our knight in shining armor. He pitched more than we expected him to, but that's because he made it impossible to take him off the mound.
Tony, do you have a grasp of the Jackson Lee situation now following the MRI? And what does the rotation look like this weekend? I imagine it would be hard for Elijah to turn around and start after as many pitches as he threw last night.
Yeah, our plan is just to roll with what we've had and let Sunday come when it may. I mean, he won't be available till Sunday, but it'll most likely be in a relief role, which is good. It'll provide an opportunity for somebody else that maybe hasn't got to start yet, or to show that they're capable of maybe starting down in Athens, Georgia in a couple weeks. So our focus is on Georgia State, but if you're in this league, and same for Georgia State in their conference, I mean, this non-conference stuff is about preparing so you have all the answers, hopefully, leading into conference. Hopefully that makes sense. What was Jackson Leith was the other part of the question? Sorry. No, a little bit of a gray area, just to be overly honest right now, because he went in for an MRI, waiting on that complete read from the doctors. It's obviously severe as far as being a hamstring injury, but how severe is the main question. And the kid's crushed. His teammates feel for him. Coaches have met with him a bunch, but we've kind of done all we can do to this point, regardless of exactly how you want to pinpoint that injury. There's going to be some significant time before he's back out there for us.
Hey, Coach, you talked about how non-conference play prepares you for those conference games, and Georgia State's had a really tough non-conference schedule. However, they've come away winners against a lot of these top 25 teams, or 4 of them exactly. What is that team doing so well, and how are they able to really shock some of these better teams in baseball?
They're not scared. That's step one. I mean, they're definitely not scared. It starts with the scheduling, but as a coach, you can't do all the work once the game starts. It's got to be the players performing that way too. And clearly, from watching a little bit of video so far and seeing the results, that's the case. When you got 2 teams pitted against each other, there's usually one team is kind of hunting down the other one. Now, for your guys' sake, or for fans, like, one reason March Madness is so good in basketball is you got 2 teams hunting each other down like crazy. So ultimately, that's what you'd like to see as a coach, competitor, or fan. But they're certainly doing that regardless of who they're playing. And that mentality probably bleeds into physicality, where some of those guys are performing in moments as well as they can, or sometimes even overachieving, if you want to call it that. But rounding out the answer, they certainly can't do this without talent. And we know a handful of guys on that roster that we recruited that are, SEC caliber athletes that are getting their opportunity to play there, and they're doing their thing. And lastly, the theme will continue all year long. Every team will be good because of COVID, because of the shortened draft. college baseball, it might be its finest year and a great year to accumulate more fans.
All right, we'll go to Ryan Shumpert next, and then Lewis.
Seems like Jordan Beck and Drew Gilbert have kind of made those sophomore jumps that you typically seen. Just what do you think's led to that? And then how much does that change, I guess, the upside of y'all's offense when some of those juniors and seniors get back to hitting like you expect them to?
Sure. Well, bleeding over from the Georgia State answer, you do have to have a little bit of talent. You know, I could make a team, but I couldn't play well with very average talent. You got to have some of that. But those two guys have been buddies, and they get along with each other and they're friends away from the field. But I mean work buddies, almost kind of colleagues up here at the facility since the moment they stepped on campus. Constantly taking extra repetitions, arriving early, staying late, getting more out of their repetitions than maybe the average guy or other guy because of their intent focus. So it's a good example of, you know, the ideal mix, the Kobe Bryant mix. You got a lot of talent mixed with a lot of work ethic and passion to be the best you can be, and you kind of get the ultimate result. I mean, a lot of times you get that walk-on work ethic with a guy who doesn't have the skill level those guys do. But like their third base coach, you know, they have that magic combo that we're looking for in recruiting. We want high character kids that also have SEC athleticism and skill level.
Tony, it's been nearly a year since COVID-19 really took hold in the sports world. What do you think about when you reflect on those days when games were being postponed, the season was eventually canceled, and has that changed how you feel about the sport at all in the year since?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, that's a heavy question. But a very simple answer is one we talked about on the drive home last night. We were here packed, the bus was packed, and we were told we cannot go to South Carolina. That was the appropriate action that was taken, but to be told you can't do something that you're prepared for and you love to do is very frustrating. So last night we could pick apart the game. There were some big time pros, especially with our Clarksville kids. There was also a lot of negatives, but you know, the buck can kind of stop at the fact that we got to play. no less that we won, but we got to play. And last year we weren't able to do that. I think our team too should be tied for the most games played in the country, if I'm not mistaken, with only probably a smaller group of teams. So I told our guys, I don't know that they believed me because I told them before the game and they didn't necessarily play that way, but the theme of the season is play 56. And because we got cut short 40 games last year. So play 56. And if we do, it was a great year, in my opinion. Sorry if those standards are too low. But if you hear some of the language I use in the dugout, you'd know that I want to win those games too. But play 56. And if we're good enough to be in the playoffs and they'll have us in, then let's see if we can wreak some havoc. If not, I don't know, maybe everyone gets to go to a beach or something like that, but or at least start recruiting earlier. But play 56. So that's kind of my perspective. And, you know, the game is just as special as all other athletics that have been cut short with this thing. You never know when tomorrow is not going to come. So, you know, take advantage of what you got, or any other cliches you want to throw at that topic.
All right, we'll go to Gustavo next, and then back to John.
Coach, 10 games into the season with 6 home games and 4 road games. What did you learn from your team with those 10 games and, you know, the traveling to Georgia and Clarksville yesterday and then the series, you know, that you had last weekend, and then also playing the Tuesday game versus Arkansas?
Right. Well, I've been around a couple unique teams that really relish in the fact that they're on the road. They get away from some things here that might be a distraction. They get to spend time around each other, get to know each other better. And then it's kind of a you against the world mentality if you're approaching road games the right way. And that brings you closer together, and you end up kind of, finding a little bit more out about yourself. And this team has that potential. They have the makeup for it. And so far in those 4 games, they've kind of shown that grit, even though there's been a couple games where it's like, man, we didn't do this right, or we weren't even in the right cutoff position. You know, you're always going to have that stuff. But if you can have that road mentality like they've had and build on it, it could be something very special. So that potential's there, and it's exciting. And at the very least, you know, a road win in non-conference, I don't know how the RPI exactly works, which is probably bad to admit, but I know a little bit about it. A road win might be just as big as some SEC home wins, or at least close to it. So the whole 10 games, if we're just going to talk about that, has been incredibly valuable. I think if you look 2 years ago when we started off the season 17-0, if I'm not mistaken, and then eventually lost the back end of a doubleheader, you know, I think that we were kind of on easy street a little bit. We were playing good teams, but there just wasn't as much stuff that went on. Rain and wind and sun and cold and extra innings and comebacks and holding a lead and winning ugly and 4 true road games. We didn't have all that stuff. And when we got to SEC play, I don't know that we were that ready. This year, I don't know if it'll look like we're ready. But I'd say if you just stopped us right now at these 10 games, we've kind of got about as much as you need in preparation wise. Of course, we'll take more, but it's been valuable.
And quick follow-up, and how unique it is to start college baseball season with the MLB spring training, because normally, you know, college baseball starts earlier, but now this year starts together. Do you think some sort of unique, do you give a little bit of incentive, you know, the pros play alongside with you guys in this unique schedule?
Yeah, it's a little bit more of a baseball flavor where you start so early in college baseball, and sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate and it doesn't seem to fit, you know. But when you see a guy like Tatis at a grand slam, and some of the pro ball guys are either training literally right now on our field to go report, or they have already reported to their big league clubs, it adds to the flavor a little bit. So it's not a massive change, but it's kind of like if we had a pro park, you know, in Old City, like they're talking, and there's a AA club in town. It doesn't vastly change our world, but it gives the city of Knoxville a little bit more of a baseball flavor, which ultimately can contribute to our program being better.
One aspect of the game that at the same time is exhilarating and infuriating is when the door remains open. You leave the door open, whether it be a 2-out error or a walk or something along those lines. Last night, your team did a great job of taking advantage of Greer's pop fly into right field that the right fielder lost. And then that was a 5-run rally, and that allowed you to flip the script on the game. Indiana State did a nice job over the weekend of doing the same thing to you. As a head coach, what do you think in terms of the ability to take advantage of that foot in the door, as well as perhaps struggling to shut the door when somebody's making the most of an extra opportunity?
Yeah, there's no way there's no way to actually coach it, but you know you got a good team when you take advantage of other teams' mistakes. And to compliment Georgia State, as we talked earlier, I believe with David, I mean, it's a sign of a team that's being aggressive towards their goal. That's where their focus is. They're trying to win the game in Michael Jordan style. You show that guy any edge at all that he sees, you know, any kind of open wound, and he's going to turn it into a gash. And a lot of that's just kind of that mentality. There's not really a skill to it. I know in football, you might be able to coach, you know, turnovers or stopping somebody or something like that. But it's just a mindset and a group effort, kind of like being on the road, being good on the road is. As far as being on the other end and stopping it, a lot of it is just having composure. So again, you look at the guys who have performed best for us on the mound or our opponents on the mound. The guys like Kirby, Hundley, Redmond Walsh, you know, Chad Dallas has kind of got the fire going at all times, but if you really are next to him, you understand it's a controlled fire. Those guys are composed. So error, so what? Bad call from an umpire, I don't care. First and third and nobody out, that's fine. Let's go to work and see if we can get this thing done. That's the mentality that's needed on the reverse end of that. And again, I think composure is a huge part of that.
We got time for a few more guys. So we'll do Ben, Ryan, and we'll finish up with Lewis.
Tony, have you been somewhat surprised by how much Jackson Greer has already impacted this team? I know he was a big time transfer, so to speak, but it seems like with all the preseason accolades, people kind of forgot about him. Have you been surprised by how much he has contributed to this point?
Not really. I mean, I think if anything, he's capable of even more as a hitter. It's an excuse, but it is also true. It's better to be in the lineup every day. I mean, it's a little easier to hit. Now for a catcher, I think it should be easier for like Pav the last 2 years when Landon Gray was the catch. He's getting to rest, refresh his body. That's why you see big league catchers that catch it all the time don't really have high batting averages because they get worn down. So we had that compliment and we still have it. So while Landon and Jackson are two totally different guys, it's a huge advantage and there's great value in having both those guys that we can trust in any situation behind the plate. But I do think like when Jackson first came in the door, he's in a total different place now than he was then. I think as the season rolls on and he gets more and more comfortable in his new role and he's just out there comfortable playing, I think he'll do even better. He's a talented kid and a total different style player than Pav, but a great compliment. And while I love Landon and I miss him, I think Jackson slides into that spot and makes sure our club isn't hurt too bad by the departure of Landon Gray.
Ryan Watson's been effective against two good teams for Georgia State so far this year. Just what have you seen from him?
Big body, very athletic, kind of loose, real proper movements. It looks appealing to the eye if you're a scout. And where he's from and what he's done, he's been in competitive situations, so he's not going to be scared. He doesn't have overpowering stuff. If you're going to look at some of the first rounders that we have to face in our league, but his stuff doesn't skip a beat if you're going to sit it next to other SEC weekend starters. So it's essentially what you're going to get is a team that is going to play at a level of an SEC opponent and a pitcher who is going to look like a weekend starter. And we've seen that a couple times from kids like Weaver and Dollander. So rack it up as one more opportunity to prove who we are. But regardless, it'll go something in our back pocket that'll be great preparation for league play because that's essentially what we're going to see.
And then we'll actually finish up with Gustavo. Gustavo, did you have another question?
1 second. Now I found my microphone. Sorry. Coach, you mentioned about the project to bring back AA baseball to the city of Knoxville. Have you been following the movement to bring it back? What do you see this movement to bring back, AA baseball to the city of Knoxville? How do you see that as a baseball coach that coaches in Knoxville for the University of Tennessee?
Yeah, call it blinders or lazy. I'm always kind of John knows I'm last to find out about who's an All-American and stuff like that. We kind of got our hands full with other things here, but you definitely hear, I live down there, so I see potential drawings and stuff like that and get asked by people, where would it go? How would it work? And I don't have any of those answers. I just know I grew up in a city of St. Louis that has a tremendous understanding for the game and appreciation for it and for it being played the right way. And it's almost kind of like a culture, and it makes the Cardinals a better organization. Almost to the fact to where they think if you wear a Cardinals uniform, you're automatically going to play better, which that's a whole nother topic. But my dad grew up in Chicago, and I went to games in Wrigley Field nonstop at a young age and older age. And that vibe of having a park in a neighborhood type setting is not only really fun, in the game, but before and after can be a lot of fun too, as long as you keep yourself out of trouble. So all those things are positives. And if that happens, great. I don't have any control over it. I don't have a lot of answers. And it is separate entirely from University of Tennessee baseball, but it could be something great for a place I live. And it could add to the baseball flavor in the city that our baseball program plays.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Coach.